everyone, it's Alicia here from the Pigeon Letters design team, and today we're going to combine both wet and dry mediums to create this Moroccan scene inspired by a view that I had on a recent trip to Morocco. I just spent 2 amazing weeks in Marrakesh and out on the coast in Essaouira, and I took my travel sketchbook with me and just captured so many different scenes and memories of my trip. And now that I'm home, I really wanted to show you how you can do the same, whether you take a sketchbook on your travels or you indulge in your wanderlust from the comfort of your own home. So grab your watercolor paints, grab your pencils, and yalla, which is Arabic slang for let's go.
So before we get started, we have to go over what supplies that you need for this project. So first things first, you need paper. I recommend watercolor or mixed media paper so that it can hold the amount of water that is going to be in our paint. Second, you're going to need a bunch of brushes, not too many, but a few. I'm going to be using this 1-inch wash brush from the Pigeon Letters, and you can use any sort of flat brush, or alternatively, if you don't have a flat brush to use, you can use a few round brushes. You can pick a size 6 or size 8, something in that kind of medium size range. So whichever one that you happen to have on hand. And then you're finally going to need some brush to work your details. So I have here a round size 2 or a size 0 liner. Either one will work. Just something that's small enough that you can get in there as we add little details like windows and kind of lines and things like that. After the brushes, we need our paint. So for this project, I'm using watercolor paint. You can use any sort of base color to lay down, like gouache or markers or whatever you like, but I'm using watercolor paint, and I will get into my colors in a little bit. The last medium you're going to need for this project is colored pencil. I have chosen a few colors that just coordinate with the paint colors that I've chosen. You could also use pastel, wax pastel, crayon, whatever your preference is, but I'm using colored pencil. When I do artwork as I travel, I think that colored pencils are really versatile. I can make a piece in just colored pencil, or I can take a few watercolor colors with me, a couple brushes, and a bunch of pencils and really work something out, which is what we're going to do here today, so you can see what I might create while I'm out on a trip. The next thing you will need is a cup of water and a rag to wipe your brush out on. You will need your reference image, which will be provided, but here it is. I have it on my iPad. This was taken from the rooftop of my one of the riads I stayed at in Marrakesh at sunrise. So we will work through this. And finally, if you have it on hand, a cup of Moroccan mint tea, just to set the mood and make you feel like you're really there. So I brought some home. I'm gonna have that here, and let's jump in.
I don't always pre-sketch out my travel sketchbook pieces because they're meant to be a little more informal and loose, especially if I'm creating them on location. However, if you feel more comfortable sketching out this scene before diving in with paint, go ahead and do that now. Just take a lightly colored pencil and just sketch out the main shapes of the scene. We'll worry about details like windows and trees and things like that when we actually start working with the paint. Once you've finished your sketch, or you decided not to sketch anything at all, you start with your flat wash brush to begin lightly color blocking. This is your base layer, so just focus on the larger shapes in the scene. In this particular painting, it's the building exteriors, the rooftops, the mosque, the mountain, and the sky. The wash brush that I'm using is the 1-inch wash brush from the Pigeon Letters. Shout out to this brush because I love it. This brush forces you to move quickly and not spend too much time focusing on perfection. Remember, when we're working in a travel sketchbook, we're usually on location and we want to work really quickly so that we can get right back out and explore. And in this particular painting, having this flat brush that has a large surface area really helps put down a lot of paint in a quick amount of time, and we get these really nice straight edges without having to spend too much time on it. So it's really, really nice to use this. You will see that I am just kind of going in and using the corners if necessary, but mostly keeping it flat on that front flat edge, and outlining any shapes I need and filling it in. I did switch over to one of my round brushes, also a Pigeon Letters round brush, in order to get that mountain in the background, but everything else in this scene for this color blocking base layer, I've gone ahead and used this wash brush. Once the base layer is dry, we go back in and we're going to add some larger shadows. I find shadows to be the unsung hero of a watercolor scene. Sure, at the end, when you add the details, they really help make a piece feel complete, but I think that shadows are a simple way to add a sense of depth and realism to even the most informal and messy paintings, as you'll see here. So I took this reference photo just after sunrise, so the light source is coming from a lower angle, kind of over my right shoulder. This means that the left side of the buildings will fall into shadow. So in order to add our shadows here, we're going to use a technique called glazing to darken those areas. Glazing just means you're using at least 2 layers of watercolor paint in order to build up color in a specific area. It's a great way to add a little bit of a shadow without making the piece look too dark or have any areas that are really opaque. To make your shadows, just add a little bit more pigment to both the raw sienna and the green mixtures, and then use the flat wash brush to slightly darken the green rooftops, the partial shadow on the ochre colored rooftop, and the left side of all the building exteriors. Once the shadow layer is dry, we're going to switch from wet medium to dry medium. So grab your colored pencils. You only need a few colors just to coordinate with the paint colors that you've already laid down. We're going to use those pencils to just add some line details around the scene to pull everything together. So starting with the most foreground green rooftop, start by adding some vertical lines on the roofs and then go in and add some curved C curves or scallops to indicate each individual roof tile. You might want to refer back to the reference photo just to get the perspective right on this. You'll do the same thing on all of the green rooftops and then switch to a beige or ochre colored pencil to get the rooftop tiles on that foreground roof as well. Once your rooftop tiles are done, use a dark beige or ochre pencil to add lines on the corners of all the houses and on the mosque, once again referring back to the photograph for placement and detail ideas. Take your green pencil to sketch in a few tiny evergreen trees and just make some scribbles on the mountain range in the distance to indicate shape and curve and movement and all kinds of mountainy things. As I mentioned before, I totally forgot to add the sky during the base layer, so all I'm doing now is taking a really watered down ultramarine blue and putting it in with the 1-inch wash brush. Now it's time to go back in and add some smaller shadow details in this scene. So we are going to add shadows on these rooftop tiles to indicate the way that they curve in real life. So for each of the rooftops, take a bit of the same color you used for the first shadow glazing layer, and use the flat brush or one of your smaller round brushes and just dab the paint along the right side of each vertical rooftop line. So the left side of the actual tile where it's curving, but on your image it's the right side of your pencil line. This will make it look like there's a shadow on that curved tile that's facing away from the sun. Take the building exterior color that you used and add a little bit of brown, burnt sienna, something like that, just to darken it slightly, and then start dabbing it underneath the edges of where the rooftop tiles would overhang on the buildings, just to create a little bit of a shadow on that building exterior. And now it's the exciting part. Let's add the final details. Using your Pigeon Letters size 2 round brush or the liner brush, which I absolutely love for small details, grab a bit of sepia or a watered down black with some burnt sienna mixed in, and start by adding the spires on top of the different buildings and on top of the mosque. Now we'll add some details to the mosque in the background. So start by adding that little keyhole cutout window, and then in the top add an arch. I've added a little bit of shadow right at the top, and then I've included the speaker that they use for the call to prayer. It kind of turned out looking like a bell, but it's definitely a speaker. Switch to a small size 2 round brush, and starting with the buildings that are in the background, add tiny little rectangles as windows, and as you come further to the foreground, increase the size of the windows. Once I got to the very front building, I switched over to the 1-inch wash brush because they made the perfect little rectangles. And then as I needed to adjust anything, I used the liner brush just to straighten my lines out a bit. But again, we're not looking for perfection. The lines can be curvy and it's okay. And finally, we add our tiny, happy little whimsical birdie in the sky, just flying around, so happy to be up for sunrise. Before I consider anything complete, I go back through and I just see if there's any other little details I need to add. Like, I wanted to add some shadow with pencil underneath of the rooftop tiles, as well as add a few more lines and shadows around the scene. But once that's done, we're done! So exciting! I hope you had so much fun creating this with me today. If you decide to make it on your own, don't forget to tag me at the Alicia Bruce. And I really do hope that this gives you the courage to create one on your next travels. So have a sparkling day. Bye.